So very quickly, my background, I was a senior lighting director at Canadian Broadcasting Corporation for 37 years. We did pre-visualization of software in the 1990s. We used 3D Studio Max, Maya, and all that stuff. And it was actually our lighting crews that did that. Anybody familiar with a program called WYSIWYG, which one person was? That was actually developed by the lighting crew at CBC. So we've been doing that sort of thing. So that being said, I also developed the world's first all LED news studio. I'm retired from CBC. I co-created the HS scope to help calibrate LED lights to the camera. So I'm going to whip through some of this sort of stuff. So today's session is about practical stuff, not theory, not whatever. It's like, how do we fix this stuff? Okay, so I had a new door put in, right? And I had a carpenter who did it by eye. They said they had a great eye, right? And they took measurements. Yep, they had all the measurements there and all that sort of stuff. They gave me all those measurements, and that's the door I ended up with, okay? Now, I had a neighbor, and their carpenter turned around and measured things, right? So I'm being a little bit funny here, but the reality is that's the problem. That's why we don't have proper color now, is that people are doing measurements, but what is the accurate measurement that we need, right? And I blame it a little bit on manufacturers too. So, for example, measuring by eye, by all means, there's different measurements, right? You know, we turn on like spectral sensitivity of the eye, et cetera. You've got to know all that sort of stuff, right? Okay, you know, look at SPD, you know, CIE, all worthwhile, okay? You know, SSI, spectral similarity index, all, you know, all valuable stuff. TM30, all good, CRI, okay? But that's all relative, okay? And the other thing too is just remember too, you've got to have all portions of the spectrum or else you don't see it. So for example, that red ball, when I don't have red light on it, it goes black, all right? So that's important because we have to have that portion of the spectrum. Now, the bottom line is this. All those measurements we talked about and all those measurements that manufacturers are putting, oh, CRI, TLCI, all that sort of stuff, that's ahead of the camera, right? I talk about after the camera. I use my camera sensor as my color meter, right? So, a few things. When a camera or light hits the sensor, it gets changed into electronic signal. Electronic signal of luminance and chroma that we can turn around and measure. Now, if I can measure it, just like a multimeter, I can measure the voltage coming out of a socket, for example. I can measure that with regards to the signal itself that comes out of the sensor. So I've got luminance at the top, and I've got my chroma signal at the bottom. So if I can measure it, I can duplicate it, right? I can replicate it. I can see if I reshift it also. So color on camera is really voltage. Now, what's the sensor made of? Essentially what happens, you get photodiodes there. When light hits it, it becomes an electronic signal. But how does it separate that light? What does it turn on, sit back and say, well, which light? So what we have is on top is called a Bayer filter. And what happens is on the photodiodes, there's actually basically a lens on it. RGB generally, right? Called a Bayer filter. And then it comes in and it gets debayered and processed after that. Now, does everybody turn around and do that? No, some manufacturers change up. You know, I know things like Blackmagic, they have what they call white. Well, actually, there's just no filter in there, which is good for low light levels and things like this. So manufacturers will change it up, but the process is pretty well the same. And again, on scopes, I can read that. Now, we start talking about color. Well, again, when we start talking about the information that comes in from the sensor itself, right, it'll sit back and say, all right, how much of the information are we saving? So you'll hear things like 420, 422, etc., and 444. 444 takes all the information in. 422 is just reducing some of it. So it's making assumptions about some of the color, right? 420, again, basic mathematically making assumptions. Now, where does the color really make a difference? In bit depth, right? It's a matter you sit back, I mean, this is an extreme, but all of a sudden you start getting into 8-bit and the transition from one color to the next is not as good. So for example, you shoot the sky, you get banding happening. So higher bit rate or higher bit depth color, it will give you a better color range. Okay, So we talk about single chip bare filter cameras, and again, just specifically things like TLCI, Television Lighting Color Index. Everybody's, oh, it's television, it must be, okay. Alan Roberts of BBC developed it, and I challenged and I said, Alan, that's specifically for 3-chip bare filter cameras. Yes, it is. It doesn't relate to a single chip bare filter camera. So when you hear manufacturers run around and say, oh, TLCI is this, all that sort of stuff, it's like, okay. He's only averaged it for a 3-chip prism camera. So again, broadcast end, 3-chip prism camera. Same idea though. What they've done is they take each chip and they put a dichroic filter on each one of them. The prism breaks it up, you get your RGB back. So similar principle to a single chip bare filter camera. Well, let's get into the heat of it. Okay, a few things. Kelvin temperature, right? We talk about those lights there, I'll take my light meter and I'll get a Kelvin temperature. No, it doesn't have a Kelvin temperature. Kelvin is technically a temperature. In other words, if I heat something up to a certain degree Celsius, to a point where it emits light, that has a Kelvin temperature. So for example, a flame, tungsten light, daylight, all has a true Kelvin temperature. What you have when you start getting into LEDs is a correlated color temperature. It used to be called apparent color temperature. So what that means is that on the chromaticity chart, what happens is you get the black body radiator curve at the center. You can have a light that has the same number given to it, so 3,000 or this, yeah, so in that case that's 4,000, well, it's 4,000 degrees Kelvin. No, it's 4,000 correlated color temperature, which means it can be above or below. So the whole point is, when you go with specs, and this is what bothers me about manufacturers, oh, here's our specs. It's like, yeah, but it says 4,000, but it can be above or below, and it can be off. So now you get 2 different light sources, same numbers, same specs, off. How do you fix it, right? If you're just going by numbers. So, let's talk about other standards. So what we have here is a vector scope. And what that does is that looks at the hue and saturation of the signal itself that comes up from the camera. Now, we talk about standards. ITU came up with standards of where colors sit. So for example, you're all familiar with color bars. You do understand that all those colors are the standards for, well, they're simply color bars, but they just adopted ITU standards. So red is supposed to sit in a specific area for the signal. So what we have is, we have all of these boxes here of different colors and different saturation values. And I'll show you on the next slide, let's explain a little bit more. The bottom line is we can turn on and measure this. Going back to the person who made that door for my neighbor, they measured it and got it accurate. And the other thing too is interoperability. If I measure it here, if I give it to post, if I give every long lines, it's the same way. If I said, okay, I want a 5-foot piece of wood, here's measuring tape. What would I get from everybody? A 5-foot piece of wood, right? If I said, well, I want a piece of wood, you know, about that long, what am I going to get? Everything inaccurate. So that's the other benefit of this. Again, I'm speeding a little bit through. So to give you a visual sense of what a vector scope looks like, we have it on the left there, and the center is white. The further we get away from the center, the greater saturation value we've got, right? Our hue value sits at these different vector points. Okay? So again, it's just like a circle, we've got different vector points. So I can tell exactly on that vector scope, example, where skin tone is, where the different colors are. So again, if I'm saying I like that color orange, how it looks on camera, I can measure that, get it exactly. When I give it to post, we go all along the line. Did it sit in the same spot? If it did, we're fine. And that's the other point too is, well, on the monitor it looks different. If I'm giving it the same feed, I know, oh, maybe your monitor's off. Okay. So essentially, that's the visual that there is with regards to vector scope. Rather important. Okay. So, and again, this is a chart that we made. It now gives you all the vector points there. Now, why is that worthwhile? Is because now you've got a reference to go by. So, for example, we'll put a chart. Let's turn this. Okay, let's get a Macbeth chart. Put that up. Okay. When we look at the previous one, it sat, for example, in the exact points where it's supposed to. We bring up something like a Macbeth chart or a color checker, and it's like that Macbeth chart was designed for film. That's what it was based on. Now, I've had a lot of arguments with different, I'm also on the ASC lighting committee. I get arguments with people. So what happens is, I like the ITU standards, and there is a chart out there, DSC made it, which has those colors that are actually calibrated to where those points are, right? In this particular case here, a Macbeth chart is not, right? So where am I supposed to go by, right? I can generate them electronically. So again, preference, not necessarily the Macbeth. But hey, I can put it on the vectorscope and see exactly what those colors are. Okay, so this is, again, when I co-create the HS scope. So it's like a vectorscope, but I put it horizontal. What happens is I've got that white line, and you can use a vectorscope, it doesn't matter to me, right? But I've got that reference point, that white line, okay? That means the chart that I shot, I lit it with a reference light. That is the camera saying, that's what I need, okay? If I replicate that exact same response from another light, the camera says, oh, same light. Okay, so again, there's the chart, there's our reference point, so I call it the camera's chroma fingerprint. If I match it, then each camera will match. Each light will match. Okay, so there's our color reference. And again, there's our white reference, and go from there. Now, is that matching? Of course not. And here's the reason I developed this, is just dead dumb simple. You can see my magenta has to come down, my blue has to come down. So as I'm adjusting all of those things, you're not guessing. I'm not working, you know, it doesn't look right. Yeah, I know it doesn't look right because our greens do much, and I start adjusting in the light itself to make it accurate. Because many lights have RGB, CY, you know, and amber, and they might have lime, all the different colors, and you adjust from there, individual colors. So, 2 greens, which one is right? You sit back going and say, well, for example, if the one on the left is what they like, there's the corporate green, and the one on the right is what we got, immediately, it's a subtle shade difference, but immediately on the scopes you can see that's wrong, right? And what do we need to do? Even on this scope here, it needs to come a little bit more to the green. We need to shift it a little bit more to cyan. So again, it's just problem solving very quickly. And yeah, and like I said, if all of a sudden we adjust it and it's accurate, so that's the benefit of scopes. So this is long and short of it. To get accurate colors, use your reference and use scopes. Okay, now in this case here, as you start adjusting, you can see immediately, okay, we've got to shift a little bit more towards the yellow, and we're far too much in our saturation. As we start adjusting real time, we start saying, okay, oh, saturation's down too much, right? We turn around, come up. But it's now telling us, we're not guessing, we're not looking at a monitor, and it's like when they say, well, is that green accurate? Yes, it's accurate. And I can give it to post-production, they'll keep it accurate. Okay. And again, same thing with luminance, right? Because again, we've got a reference chart there, and we said, well, and again, this is, right now this is just SDR. If all of a sudden we start getting an HDR, realize wide color gamut in HDR is just an extension of SDR. So for example, what happens when we get into SDR at 100 IRE, it starts clipping, so we lose information. So that light bulb that you saw there, you don't see the filament, it looks burnt out, right? In the case of HDR, well, now we've got a higher range that we can do than SDR, and it's not clipping, so you see the detail there. The same thing with a wide color gamut, right? That red that we had in the SDR on the vectorscope, same red, just greater saturation. Anyways, I'll try and whip through. Now, okay, let's start playing around with Unreal. Guess what? I can take the virtual camera from Unreal and put it into our scopes. We've got a plugin for Unreal. So when I start playing around with the color panel they've got, I can start seeing what differences I'm making. So here's the benefit. I can actually give the Unreal artist my reference line here, say match that in the virtual camera. Now it'll make the virtual camera look exactly like my onset camera. So the artist up to then was, oh, it looks good on my monitor. I don't care what your monitor. Are we matching to what the camera is seeing on set? And the importance for me is that everything has to start with the lighting on set. First off, match your lights, and we can do that by looking at the scope and saying, am I getting the same response between each other? If I do, then my lights are matched, okay? Then I turn around, I'll throw that into the Unreal Artist and said, right, here's a chart, put it in there, light it, but now you've got to match your lights to what we're getting the response on camera. And again, talking with Epic, I'd like more controls in the color, please, thank you. But in all fairness to Epic, look at, they're a game engine, they make games. Oh, and by the way, here's some virtual production stuff, right? So, and again, we start talking about skin tones. This is our skin tone line. First off, again, dealing with different skin tones throughout my whole career, there's one commonality that everybody who's living has. Okay, cut yourself and you'll find it out. Everybody has red blood. So the base that we have is red. And we turn around, sit back, sit with that red. Generally, red and yellow is what we sort of mix to make our skin tones. Now, skin tones would vary. We might have different saturation values. We might shift a little bit, but we're not into blue, we're not into whatever. And that's the whole point. Quickly looking at that, if all of a sudden our skin tones are way off in green, it's like, whoa, our monitor might be off. We could look at the scope going, whoa, our skin tones are off. Somebody adjusted the monitor so they're off. And it's like, oh, that's not looking right. I love this. Oh, that's not, oh, let me adjust the monitor. I had a DP do that once. It's, oh no, it's too dark, I'll adjust it. I said, what the heck are you doing? I calibrated it, right? So, anyways. But again, if we go to the scopes, we'll say, are we getting that information there? So for example, here, if it was too dark, we'd be if everything was down and we had no information, we'd see it, right? But all this information we can give the people in Unreal. Okay. Very quickly work through. Yeah. I've got a lot that I use on set. Guess what? I can put that into Unreal. And now I can see if, when I put it into, first off, I would light it so that my virtual camera matches my on-set camera. Then if I've got a LUT in my camera, I put in a LUT into Unreal, and let's see if it matches up, right? Again, measuring tape, that's it. Okay. We start looking at saturation values, everything adjustment we start doing. Because the whole point is, when an Unreal artist starts playing with that color point, they're going, oh, this is a pretty picture. For who? Right? And this is why the benefit of the scopes is we now calibrate it accurately. And I love video manufacturers. Trust me, a lot of manufacturers are off their Christmas card list. It's a matter of going, oh, we calibrate. To what? Right? You know? I always calibrate to the camera. I realize every camera is different, and no two cameras of the same model match. And the other thing, too, manufacturers never talk about, electronic drift, right? You have a camera running for some time and all that stuff, yeah, it's going to drift. You have a video wall running for some time, it's going to drift, okay? But at least with the scope, you're going, yeah, we drifted. Where do we need to bring it back? Okay, let's play through that. And again, we just got the ITU vector points that we're going through, and that's the benefit of having a chart that's referenced to ITU. You know where they're supposed to be. Now, every camera will move at different places. That's fine. They all have the different look, right? And here's the other point with the scopes is, I'm not hard and fast that everything's got to be here. No, I want to start it with a baseline. Be as creative as you want. You want blue faces? Go for it. You want this and that? But after you've gone creative, I can measure that to make sure we're carrying it through. Secondly, when you said, I want to get back. Well, I know where our baseline is. We can go back to it. Okay. Again, just different color control. And again, you can evaluate LUTs in Unreal. Again, not theory. I did this as one of the virtual studios up in Toronto, right? And we start looking at the scopes themselves and said, is it accurate? And we were using an Aerial X at that point. Is it accurate on camera, right? And we turned around, measured it, and went from there. So actually what they had is they had some new panels in, and they wanted to see, are they matching our old ones or whatever. So we just stick our chart up, put scopes up, going, yeah, they're the same. And again, it's not an opinion. I don't give opinions here. It's like a carpenter doesn't say, oh yeah, I think that's 5 feet. I feel 5 feet. It's like, it's 5 feet, right? You know, and so, but literally, I'm sort of joking about this, but how many people would say, oh, I got a good eye? Okay, could you tell me if it's 5 feet and 1/16 of an inch, or is it 5 feet 2/16 of an inch? How good is your eye? You know. Anyways, this is the basic setup we had out in Manitoba. So virtual wall up there, chart up in the background, virtual artists there with Unreal, with the scopes running, and all real-time correcting. So our lights are calibrated, the video wall was calibrated. That's the other thing too, with the video wall, I can put the chart as a graphic itself into the video wall, calibrate that, and then calibrate the content going into it. Okay, now, oh, my XY. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'm lighting that chart with a RGB video wall. There's my XY, there's my white point, it's all good. Look at all my secondaries, they're off. I have deficiency in the spectrum that's coming out, right? And I'm stuck, nothing I can turn around and do with it, right? Now I know some manufacturers say, oh, well, we'll make a video wall with RGB, okay, that's great. Yeah, it's called a light, I've got those, right? I can't shoot it, I can't do whatever. So, I mean, it's all fine. You're talking about image-based lighting, we can get into that afterwards, but there's just a lot of misinformation out there. So, and actually, Jeff Webster was a gaffer from Mandalorian. He had a whole session with me, and he was talking about, they're telling me I can light with these video walls, and I said, no, you can't. And I showed him what the issue was, right? So I said, you have two choices. Either you light everything RGB, so therefore it's all deficient equally, and you give it to post, and they can turn around and fix it, or you just overpower it, right? Go from there. So again, this whole concept, you know what I don't understand? Why is the outside of the frustum lit? Why is it up? It's not on camera. Keep it black. Why keep all this ambient light coming in, right? And contaminating things. The other thing too is, why do we shoot such low level, light level on a virtual set? It's like, no, I don't have to bring it down. I can put an ND in, still open up, and guess what? Now that I've opened up, if I light at 20-foot candles, and if I get 10-foot candles hitting the black point in that video wall, guess what? Oh, we can see it. I did this down in Trilla Studios. Oh, you can see it. Okay, well, I'll light the 80-foot candles. I'll put an ND in, open up. Now I'm lighting at 80. What does that 10-foot candles look like on black? Nothing. I took a pepper and I spotted up there. Can you see it? Yeah, by my eye, but not on camera. So again, there's just certain physics that come along that you turn around and go with. Okay, now, in the camera itself, I'll try and whip along here quickly. We can go into in the camera and just the matrix. So for example, this here is we adjust the R minus B and playing with that. So the things that we can turn around and do. Now again, keep the white point exactly where it is. And this is what manufacturers do to create their look. If you actually bring up an area, right, and go from there, you're not going to get saturation in all the different areas. They'll have their own look. And very quickly, I'll show you how much control, I mean, this is going through DaVinci Live Grade, but I'll show you how much control you can do, right? If you just want a specific color to be adjusted, you can, right? But because you've got that reference, you can see immediately what we're adjusting, what colors, rather than just going and adjusting and seeing it happening on set. It's like, okay, well, let's play around with those colors. You see it's happening there, but you're not guessing. It's like, oh, we've gone too far. Where do we go back? You can see immediately here how much we've adjusted it to, right? So there's the advantage of the scopes and control. And I just sort of whip through. Anyways, I had done this down at NAB for Planar. They had a virtual set. They had 3 red cameras, and they had their video wall. And they were shooting all multi-camera. So each frame, we're using the Brompton processor. So each frame, all stuff was coming up. We're doing, each camera angle was getting its own frame. So you multiply that by 3, and all of them have to match. So what we did was, in the virtual set that they built in Unreal, gave them the chart, right? They used scopes, they calibrated that. They did all this sort of stuff. But it was calibrated to the lights on set. First, match the light on set. There's your reference light. Then we, nothing in the monitor except for the graphic of the chart up there. Use the scopes, calibrated it, and used the 14 color that Brompton has, adjusted each color. Remember when I got into that whole thing where we should show each color being adjusted? So I didn't affect anything else. We did that. It all matched. Okay, good. So we're all happy. But before we did all that stuff, we went to the red cameras, looked at them on scopes under the light going, is this camera matching? Is this camera matching? It's like, I think so. Yeah, no. On the vector scope, is it lined up exactly? In this case, I use the HS scope. Does it line up? Does our red line up? We're getting the same response, right? in which case we went in, we made a LUT for the all 3 cameras, put them in, and it was like, okay, they're matched. They're happy, video wall's happy, let's get the content in, and now that's correct. And it saves so much time. Okay, now my lights don't shift color when they dim. Okay, good, prove it to me. I'm dimming a light here, right, and you see the color change, go down, right? That's fine, that's where it should be. It should be right in the center. There is no shifting of color there whatsoever. Okay, all right, good. You've made that claim, I've now validated it. And that's what I put them to the test of. Show me, okay, here's another manufacturer. Yes, our lights do not shift color when they dim. Okay, again, let's evaluate it. Right, as we start dimming, okay, that's good, and all of a sudden, oh, it shifted. But, you know, you can see that immediately. There's no guessing, right? The problem is there's so many manufacturers out there, all the specs look the same, all this sort of stuff, and yet how do they validate it? I've been to, you know, I mean, there's one manufacturer I've been on to, and, you know, we disagree on things. He's also part of the ASC committee, but at least he said, yeah, we should publish our scope readings, because there's no guessing then. You know, like, again, all those TLCR or CRI, all this, everybody's, oh, that's important. No, it's all head of the lens. That's all. CRI was designed by the Illumination Engineering Society for your eyes, right? Again, I just look at things after the sensor. Okay, so let's use color meter. Oh, we got a color meter. Okay, well, there's true tungsten on the left on the HS scope and the vector scope. I've metered that LED at 2970. Not so good. Number-wise, oh, that's 3196. Number-wise, we're close. But look at the chroma response. Totally different. The camera's saying, doesn't match. But now you're with the color meter, and the gaffer's up there going, yeah, but I'm on my meter, it doesn't match. It's still looking wrong. Where's it wrong? We start looking at the fact, well, our cyan's too high. Does it look like that true tungsten? No. If we're going to adjust the different LEDs in that light, we know what to turn around and adjust to match it into the tungsten. So when manufacturers say, oh, we're matching tungsten, well, show me your scope readings. Does that look like that? And what does that affect? It does affect things like skin tone, right? If it's off, we'll see it. Again, going back to that red ball, if it don't have the portion of the spectrum there, you don't get it. And again, realize that LEDs, of course, are a narrow band. The other thing too is binning. 2 LEDs, reds, will be off. It depends on how tight the binning is. So when you manufacture that, when they measure it, is this red light as close as possible to this red? Now, you can get a cheaper light or cheaper whatever all that sort of stuff because the binning is wider. It's like, well, it's sort of, right? And it's a cheaper LED. Now, put more portion of the spectrum in, you get a fuller light. But realize there's still spikes, and now you've got to cross them over, right? So in other words, you've got to adjust portion of the spectrum, like I showed before when we adjusted those different light values, right? Intensities of the different RGB or CYM, or not CYM, you know, amber and all that sort of stuff. So the bottom line is this. I've got a tungsten light on the left, and I've got an LED that says it's matched to tungsten. Pretty close, a little bit down in the cyan, but I can turn around and see where it is, right? Now, let's say, for example, I'm doing a scene, let's say a Joker, and they're wearing some magenta where it really has to stick out. Well, yeah, that's going to make a difference, but in other cases, we may not turn around and see it. The one constant everybody knows are all around the world is skin tone, right? They have no idea what color clothes I'm wearing or whatever, we can play with that, right? But skin tone, at least you want as a constant. And quite frankly, if there's light in the background, I just want it blue. Okay, you don't have to get fussy on the whole thing. But if all of a sudden you're lighting people, you probably want to get fussy. Okay, and again, we start talking about the color space. Well, we actually have a scope from the camera. So we're not guessing at the color space. Are we in that color space? Are those two colors the same, or whatever the case is? So we're not guessing anymore. And each camera has their own little color space that we can show up. Have we gone too far? Do we need to come back? Are we in 2020, right? Okay, and we have scopes that are either 2020 or 709. Okay, a LUT will fix everything. Okay, great, wonderful. Guess what? A LUT is global. I have 3 different lights lighting that ball. 1, 2, 3, and they're all off. how am I gonna fix that with a LUT? It's not gonna take that portion of the picture. I can do it with power windows and change it in post, but I got 3 of them up. A LUT will not fix it. I should go in and calibrate those lights so that they're all balanced. Then I can stick a light or LUT onto it, and it's all globally changing. Once it's all balanced, you go from there. But I've heard it 10 million times, a LUT will fix it. No, it won't. Not when you got 3 inaccurate things, right? Oh, the other thing too is that if you, we white balance or balance your camera. Okay, great, wonderful. Did you black balance your camera? Because what can happen is you can still have current within the sensor itself that actually imparts color into the black levels. So if we look over on the side over here on the vectorscope, we start seeing that black should actually be sitting right in the center of it. But it's not, it's shifted towards the green. You can see that the blue, cyan on the left. You see the bit of green in the center, you see red on there. And it's like, okay, that's in the black level. So what'll happen in the shadow areas, you start seeing these colors. It's like, well, why is that? We don't have a light on them. It's like, well, because you didn't do a black balance. Okay, and when you're starting out from one, and this is more a broadcast or an AV end of it, I'm starting off sending your signal and you're receiving it. How do I know that you're getting the exact what I sent out? Okay, so in this example here, we're sending out from DaVinci Live into NDI, and we actually found out, you know something? We actually have to adjust our source because what we were getting through NDI was giving a problem, and we actually had to adjust and compensate for that for the end. We had that all the time. We'd have double enders, have a shootout in Beijing or something like that, bringing a feedback to our news, and we're looking at the scopes, going, okay, can you adjust that over here because whatever the signal is being contaminated somewhere along the line, we need to adjust. So that's the other benefit. It's like, well, I measured 5 feet here, yeah, but it's not 5 feet here. Can you adjust a little bit, right? Okay, and very quickly, just color bars. Okay, what the heck are these things for, right? They're actually a reference. So what happens is when you go down to the lower section, I'll show you here. So this lower section up here is called Pluge, right? Professional graphic fingers, I don't. You're having different black levels. So when it comes up on the monitor, you can set the black bar, it's not so obvious here, so that you can just see the middle black bar, right? And the 3.5 should actually go out and be totally black. And again, I'm going to talk about calibrating, or not balancing a monitor. It's not calibrating, that's a whole different thing. Calibrating, you need a probe and do all that stuff with it, but at least balancing the monitors. There's a thing called blue only, so when you get color bars up, what happens is, when you push blue only, it kills all the other colors of it. The reason why you've got, for example, I'll jump back here, the reason why you've got these different colors here, because when you go to blue only, they're your reference. And what happens is, that blue line there should all match. So again, you're adjusting your hue and saturation. Now, technically in digital component, you shouldn't have to adjust your phase or your hue, right? And again, I heard it from all the people. Well, again, we were the first all digital plant in the world at CBC, and we had green coming in our signals. So it's like, okay, well, you can't adjust the phase. It's like, okay, but it's green. So the theory is, and this is what I challenge people on, okay, great, so I should if that's the case, I should go to every monitor, just adjust saturation, they're all balanced. No, it doesn't happen. So that's why they now have hue back in. But that's the benefit of monitors that have blue only, because basically, once these all match, then your hue and saturation values are there. Again, just a balance, not a calibration. At least now I know, okay, this one's sort of looking like this one, and this one's looking like that. Because the worst thing I've said is, oh, don't go by that monitor. Oh, no, don't go by that monitor. Oh, don't go, it's like, what the heck am I going by? Right? At least if you've got them roughly where they should be, it's like where you should go is take a look at the scopes. And again, not everybody's going to know scopes, but at least a DP, all these other people should know scopes. Lighting people should know scopes. Going, are we good? Yeah, okay. Are our skin holes looking good? Yeah, okay. Because when you're out in the middle of the sun or whatever the case, you can't check your monitor. With scopes, they're not going to lie to you. Okay. Again, ITU compliant charts. I'm just whipping through this, and I think we're doing okay, time-wise. There we go.
You nailed it. Wow.
Okay.
Open it up to Q&A.
Sure. How did I get so good looking? Well, you know. Sorry, that question wasn't asked? Oh my goodness, I'm devastated. Actually, I've got a term, I got a face made for radio. Anyways, sorry, go ahead.
Question about Unreal. You were talking about the vector scope reference lines. How do you save those out so that you can refer back to them and get back to that state if you find that you're not in camera view?
Okay, so so I can bring the virtual camera into our scopes, right? Now, that's why I created the HS scope, because then I can bring it in as a phase and amplitude level. I can store that as a white reference line. That's stored as a file. I can now have that and bring it up anytime that I want. And I can lay that over what you're sending me now in Unreal, right?
Is there a limit to how many states you could save?
No, it's just a file, right? So you go from there. And to get really, really fancy, there's something else we can do. I can actually have a webcam emulate any other camera. What we do in the HS scope, what we do is actually take the chroma signal, flatten it down, so it's all just, everything's equal. Then I've stored a chroma response of, like, let's say an ARRI Alexa shooting a chart. I now put that on top of it, and now that webcam is emulating an ARRI. So I don't even have to have an ARRI to start calibrating with. I could actually do that in Unreal also, right? Bring that in. But, you know, do you work in Unreal?
Getting there.
Okay, yeah. But that's the whole point is that, you know, it's good that you're sort of thinking that way, because it's like, wait a second, I want a reference. Because otherwise you're just dealing with a monitor. The benefit we had at CBC is the lighting people ourselves, again, dealing with all our virtual production stuff. So we knew this stuff, right? And that was a benefit. And look, it's not like, oh, we're done, we're all fixed, right? No, you might have to tweak. The worst thing there is in virtual production now is that people work in silos. Oh, I'm a world builder. Okay, but do you know you affect everything down the line? Oh, I'm a lighter in Unreal. You affect everything down. So for us, like, okay, I was a virtual lighting director and I was an on-set lighting director and then doing all this sort of stuff. That's what needs to happen with people. People need to dialogue, right? Like I showed you right there, if all of a sudden I start introducing just scopes and the chart and say, okay, when you're coloring, go to that. Don't worry about your monitor, right? I mean, go by your monitor, yes, but at least have this as a reference and go from there. Howdy. Yeah. Sorry,
Rajanja, sorry.
No problem. I think you're just being friendly.
Yeah, so I guess in a commercial situation, right? Like on a TV or a film set, I hopefully have had time with the team or received this information for prep and gotten the cameras ahead of time to color calibrate.
Well, no, what's going to happen, no, it doesn't, you're not color, no. I'm going to take what the camera's giving me, right? So you go to preset, let's say you use an ARRI Alexa as preset at 32 or preset whatever it was, right? It's like, no, I didn't have time. Like, it was like production always gave me, okay, you got a few minutes, go. So what would happen is I'd put the chart up, I'll throw a light on, but I know what to turn on and fix, right? Like, and it doesn't have to be on matching it to tungsten. It's like, okay, I'm using a Kino Mimic. Okay, that's my reference light. Okay, I'll set that up there, and again, that's my reference light for a skin tone. Great. Now, if I put another light there, I want to make sure that's matching. So maybe I'll match those. The one in the background, lighting's blue, it's like, whatever, right? I won't worry about that. So, but I'm matching that to the camera's chroma fingerprint. So whatever the ARRI, because you want that ARRI look. So I'm not going to change that, so I put that in there. So yes, the benefit of this is that it's like a carpenter with measuring tape. It's like, yeah, give me the measuring, okay, and I can cut it on set, and we're done. That's the whole benefit. This could be done on set. Because literally, I wasn't given time. I was on production. It's like, lighting, you know. Now, talent, they can mess up all the time, but you know, 5 minutes for lighting, forget it. Yeah. But that's what I do.
Yeah, I answered it. I think the other thing, I don't know enough about the black bar and the Puge, so
No, I mean, like I say, you can get into that a little bit more, but the point is that I was just going through that. That's a benefit of having a monitor that actually has things like blue only and things like this. There's reason for these tools so that you can balance them out, right? You know, at least because the monitor's wrong. Well, I think I adjust. It's like people are just guessing. That's the benefit of that. At least you can set it up so that they're balanced. Now, to really turn it on and do it, you're gonna have to probe on it and calibrate it and do all this stuff properly, you know, and for a proper color suite, right? The other thing we had in our color suites is we had our reference monitor, but we also had a 18% gray wall that was all backlit, so you weren't looking against black stuff. Right? So
I was gonna say just, full disclosure, I'm with Sony. One of the things that we've built into to address what you're saying is an auto color calibration tool plugin for Unreal Engine, that if you're using a Sony Venice and a Sony wall, we can use it with third-party cameras and walls as well, but we have a completely virtualized Sony Venice in Unreal that via metadata will auto-calibrate, throw up a chart, auto-calibrate the camera, auto-calibrate the wall, and manage drift over the course of the day, and then gives you a report on drift.
I know you've got that. The only thing the thing is, like, so now what do? Do I calibrate my lights to match your virtual one?
That you have to set up in your workflow. You
Yeah,
tell me that
exactly.
first, and
So
we go from
what
there.
I would do is, I would turn on sit back, because I have worked with Sony Venice. I would have my Sony Venice here, get the camera's chroma fingerprint, and then everything down the line, I will calibrate to what's on set lighting wise, right? But yeah, same sort of thing.
Do you go so far when you do have the time to do full white shadings across the cameras to truly balance the
Yeah.
actual image reproduction, or, because I
Yeah.
know some folks do, and
No.
there's like 2 people that do.
Okay, so, again, just at CBC, we went into the whole matrix of the camera,
So
right?
you do full OHP shading?
Yeah.
Okay.
The whole thing. Yeah, that's what we would do. And as a matter of fact, CBC now has some Sony HDR
Yep.
cameras. And the interesting thing, let's get technical, nerdy on this. Okay, in SDR, just like you know your SDR, right? I have knee aperture, so I can roll off the peaks.
Yep.
But if I shoot HDR and I'm down converting it to SDR, because I do the same at the same time, knee aperture is grayed out.
Stay tuned for firmware.
Because what I was finding is, when I was shooting HDR, right, my SDR wasn't rolling off as nicely as it was if I just saw SDR. Now, I was talking to a video operator yesterday, again, I'm retired from CBC, but I was talking to him yesterday. What they're doing a workaround, and he's doing the sensor to turn around and do the whole thing,
Well,
right?
now there's the super whites that we're trying to figure out how to account for in HDR, which are, I don't know, pick your adventure right now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly, and that's the other thing too, is that there's so many variables. But going back to scopes, you can and the other thing too is that you can validate the fact that if I got 2 Sony cameras, they're not matching,
yeah.
right?
exactly.
And it's like, just blatant stuff, right? So that's the reason for having scopes. If this one's not matching, I can at least adjust it so these 2 line up. And when you get into an event where you're having multi-cameras, you've got to balance them up, and that's the benefit of the scope. So basically, long short, obtaining accurate color on camera is using scopes and ITU references. So that's the other thing too, is that the chart you use is a best chart, and I'm off on that one, but that's something else.
Well, you know, the other joke too is that I learned it in college here, which was you never, if you're LD and you have any female producers on set, you can't ever disagree with the woman about that because they might be tetrachromatic. So women will have a 4th color receptor, and they are seeing colors you can't.
And then you get some people like Billie Eilish and my nephew, who when they hear sounds, they see a color.
Yeah, synesthesia.
Right. So, but here's the bottom line. The benefit of that is, I'm not guessing with scopes. It's like, here's where it is, and if anybody needs a reference, you should go from there, right? And the other benefit too is all of a sudden somebody's colorblind and they won't say anything because it's their job. They can use a scope and they know where it's supposed to be. And if all of a sudden you get into 2 colors that are similar, you get into mechanical ellipses, they're similar. You can tell on the scopes if they are or not, and we can turn on and adjust them, how you want off. So that's the whole benefit. But yeah, that's the only thing I disagree with you on. The Sony thing on that was like, okay, you chart and this and that, but yeah, but
Yeah, that's why we virtualized it, because
Yeah.
it was just easier that way.
hi. Sorry, you reversed?
So you said something interesting and you kind of glossed over it really quickly,
Okay.
but it was about how you wish that in VP shoots they would turn off the outer frustum.
Yeah.
I have never been able to work that way, but I've heard the argument for it and it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Are there any other things that you have seen commonly happen in VP shoots that like you wish we would stop doing? Or do, besides the scopes talk that we just got, which was great.
Well, number one, start using scopes, right? Like I say, I just, well, yeah, image-based lighting. Yeah, no. Because here's the whole thing. Okay. I was mentioning before. Image-based lighting. If I stick all of this image here, I've now changed, and you're now. So I take a picture of all you. You're now in this course, right? I've now transferred a reflective source into an emissive source, right? So yes, I am being affected by these lights everywhere here, but the reality is the proportion of you way back there influencing the spectral image on me is very little. But if I turn it on, put it in image-based lighting, and I bring it all up, and you're now illuminating me, then I've contaminated the whole thing. Now, you do affect me, but such a low level, right? So if I do an image-based lighting, pull it all down rational to what is here, that's fine, right? The other thing too, what I don't like in image-based lighting is like, it's all there it is. Well, that's not the case. I've got this bouncing here, I've got this happening here. So what I do is I'll put the chart in here, and I get the overall light, and now I replicate that in Unreal and do all that sort of stuff and go from there, right? And that's, now, image-based lighting is great, you fire, you whatever stuff, or I'm turning around saying, all right, I've got trees going, a car, and I got trees going, well, I can make the trees black if need be, and then the white output is like a daylight thing, so I don't have the person with the flag going along doing that effect. It's great things you can turn around and do. But that's the issue that I've got. I mean, I saw at NAB, there was literally a car thing. It's like all these trees going by in this thing, and it's like, they're all green. And the person on set's looking green. It's like, that doesn't happen in real life. But had they gone black and white, you sort of go from there. So that's the only thing I was going to say about that. But yeah, I never understand, like, and also the other thing too is that why not use ND, right? Like, light to a higher light level, right?
I've heard the argument for that also, and I do feel like that's starting to become a more popular technique.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say because it's just like so anecdotal.
And the other thing too is check your ND, because you can check it on a scope and see if it shifts, right? Manufacturer, I was at a trade show yesterday and all that stuff, manufacturers, oh yeah, no shift colors. So, yeah, tell me, show me. Validate it all, right? And sure enough, and if it does shift, not a problem. We can turn it on, correct it in camera, so it's a thing. The other thing too is that with the video wall itself, okay, let's lower the intensity down. Did it shift, right? Yeah, it does, right? Everybody says, oh no, it's linear. It's like, okay, prove it. That's my thing, is validating, right? That's the whole thing with scopes.
The only thing about light level was talent. I've had that a couple of times. They don't want it that bright. They can't handle it,
Yeah.
and they can ruin anything.
So what you're saying, talent is not that bright? Okay.
I didn't, you did.
Well, the other thing too.
To the web stream, I didn't say that at all.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that people talk, well, skin tone. Okay, if you talk about lighting skin tone, why do we have a makeup department? You're not lighting skin tone. You're actually lighting makeup that's hitting them, so therefore it's not going through the translucent layer and reflecting back, it's actually hitting matte makeup, right? And I always have the makeup artist with me on set, watching my monitor, right? Because, you get makeup with different tone and it goes from there. Sorry, and we had, yourself had a question?
Yeah, I think we have this last question and then.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering, I mean, maybe it's too much of a rabbit hole, but like, in the BP world, there's so much talk of calibration of all of these different systems, kind of just become a catch-all of like, I'm gonna do some work, I'm gonna go calibrate something. And you talked about the difference between monitor balancing versus calibration, and I was just
Okay, so what we're talking about, like a monitor reference for calibration for color grading suite, right? I was just talking about balancing there, how at least make them look similar. And when I'm talking about calibration, I'm talking about using a scope itself from the camera itself coming out, right, and going from there, and using that reference. Everything should be calibrated to that, is what I feel, right? Now, just a note, I mean, our website is Calibrated Technologies. You go there, if you download the software, you get free scopes, free trial, couple of weeks. Again, this is a promo thing, and then if you don't buy the software, you get the vector scope in a waveform anyways with it. So you got, yeah. All right, anyways.
Thank you so much.